What immediately tells you that a person has had traumatic childhood/past? How they normalize the abuse they received. I had one of my close friends over for dinner once, and my little sister, who was 6 at the time, accidentally dropped her cup on the floor. It wasn't a big deal, it was a plastic cup, so it was just juice. My parents' reaction completely shocked him. All they did was get some napkins and dried it up and got her some more juice. It didn't seem weird to me at all, but later when we were alone he told me while laughing when he did that at her age his father smacked him in the face. I was just like a grown-ass man smacked a 6-year-old in the face for spilling some juice. He told me the way I said it like that it sounded fucked up. That's because it is fucked up, but he remembered it like it was a funny childhood memory. They seem more aware of their surroundings and the people around them. This either manifests as them being extremely empathetic or extremely closed off as a defense mechanism. When something good happens to them, like a promotion or something romance-related, they get worried instead of happy. If they go out of their way to make/keep everyone happy. My mom would fly off the handle at a moment's notice, and I would have to always be hyper-aware of where she was at all times and listen for footsteps to see who it was walking around. Saying sorry all the dang time. I had this one co-worker who wanted to show me her cats, and as she was opening her phone she made a mistake and dialed the wrong passcode number and had to try again, saying sorry, and said she should have used Face ID like normal people. And said sorry again. Then nervous laugh. As a kid I used to think children usually don't like their fathers and are afraid of them, because I thought fathers always beat their kids. My father lives in another state for work, and so did some of my friends' fathers. One day, one of my friends said his father is visiting and I immediately felt bad for him. I made a sad face and looked at him. For my huge fucking surprise, he was genuinely happy. I could see it in his face as he told me the news. It would since take me a few weeks to get out of the confusion and realize that other fathers are usually sweet. But yeah, the torture that my family would get from that individual would just increase over the years. I just graduated and got my first job. I'm planning on moving away from him with mom and sis and arranging therapy for all of us. I once held a 5-year-old birthday party for my daughter. We had the pinata and it wouldn't break with the kids hitting it with a stick. So my husband grabbed it and tore it apart like the Hulk, to which every child laughed hysterically. Except for one kid who ran to the nearest table and put her fingers in her ears, rocking back and forth, crying and squeezing her eyes shut. I called her mom, and when she got there she was the most apologetic, meek, timid person who looked malnourished and fragile. I wanted to save them both because it's clear there is a monster in their lives. Catastrophize any time there is an uncertain/risky circumstance. Redditor responds. My wife has this trait. We're about to receive several $100,000 in a lawsuit, and I've often suggested to her that she should think of some kind of nice trip or fancy object that she might want to celebrate when we get paid. She really struggles with it. It's hard for her to express hope or want, if something is in the future. The future is chaos and any bad thing could happen. We could win that money and the economy could collapse the next day, or the judge could decide I'm an asshole, I'll call the whole thing off, etc. She can imagine like a sci-fi writer when it comes to bad, but she struggles with good. Scared of conflict to the point you avoid it at all costs, certain that if it happens the other person will hate you/it will end awfully. You've never seen people calmly sit down and discuss their emotions in a loving way, so that world doesn't exist. Choosing partners who don't support, cherish or value you. Choosing jobs and relationships that reflect the lack of empathy and neglect that you grew up with. Constant dark humor or self-deprecating humor. Also the ability to totally pretend crappy things never happened or pretend someone didn't do something awful to you. People might think you're really funny and forgiving, but sometimes they are both just coping mechanisms. Getting disproportionately frustrated at themselves for small accidents such as spilling things, accidentally breaking something, etc. What happens is, a lot of these people would be abused as a kid for these things, so as an adult when it happens, their brain overloads their system with fear and anxiety, and frustration can be secondary emotion to that. So when these things happens, this is basically a conditioned response because your brain associates these accidents with imminent danger. This is why therapy is so important for people who had shit childhoods, especially during their developing years. I had no idea this was a thing until I went to therapy, but when my therapist explained this to me, it made so much sense. And now when these things happen, I tend to laugh it off. An adult acting childlike. People think it's cringe, but age regression is a trauma response. You can especially see this if you've ever been to a psych ward. People are clinging to blankets and stuffed animals. Childhood was probably the last time they existed without being traumatized. Extreme self-cringe, doubting if what you said was the right thing. Doubting if you acted the right way, or behaved the right way in a social setting. Asking someone several times if you did something correctly. Zoning out because you randomly remembered a traumatic childhood memory, low self-esteem, lack of confidence. Inability to form and keep relationships, having sparse or little to no memory of your childhood, eating disorders, depression, social anxiety, agoraphobia, extreme emotional shifts, attachment issues, consistent exhaustion, strong unexplainable reactions toward social stimuli, separation anxiety, gastrointestinal issues and complications, substance abuse and addiction, intrusive thoughts, self-destructive behavior, etc. Inability to feel or process some emotions. I, for example, can't feel lonely. Isolation, as a child, was my only time of peace, and now I crave it to an unhealthy degree. Being alone never gets old for me. I never feel the need to be near or with anyone ever. I've never dated IRL, I've never had more than one strong friendship. Inability to trust that people are genuine. I can't receive a compliment. I believe 100% of them are just lying to me or lining me up to use me for some reason. I can be criticized, but it's meaningless. It doesn't hurt, or change anything. Everything in my entire life has had major negative critical judgment, and it's like water off a duck's back now. Lack of desire to compete or accomplish. This can include goal setting. As a child I learned, no matter how much effort I put in to get something I wanted, it wasn't good enough, or it would be taken away by the poor decisions of parents. They would move. Destroy it. Lose it. Give it away to someone else, or move me away from it. So, even at 40, there's nothing I'll work towards, because nothing feels like it's real, or worth it, or going to be kept. I'm like the anti-hoarder. Nothing has value to me like it should. Nothing. Loss of sense of self. So sometimes you feel disembodied. You feel like an observer in your own life. Third-personing thing. When they don't ask for favors or help. Ever. Lack of trust. No trust falls, no matter the person. They don't like it when people get them something, or they don't like being the center of attention. Their heart may be racing, but their face stays calm. When they're not disappointed when something bad happens. They accept it and keep moving. They hate threats. As we're in the middle of this video, I'd like to take a moment to ask if you're enjoying the content so far. Would you please consider subscribing to my channel? Your support helps me continue creating more videos like this and keeps you in the loop for future updates. My sister's 6-year-old friend came for a visit. She was a foster kid placed with some church friends of ours. When she got to our house, my dad told them they could grab some snacks from the pantry. Then every 20 or so minutes, for 4+ hours, she would go to our fridge or pantry, open the door, look like she's searching for something, close the door and go back and play. When she left, my dad found a stash of snacks under my sister's bed she had put there. Her foster parents had told my dad that could happen, so he wasn't surprised. But I remember kinda yelling at her to stop opening up the fridge and my dad taking me aside and explaining why she was doing this. Now this is the part that still makes my heart break and my blood boiled. Since age 3 she had been living out of a car with her doped-up mom and a brother who couldn't have been 2 years old. When they finally stayed long enough in one area for CPS to become aware of the situation, she was 5. Her mom would disappear for days and leave them in the car by themselves. This little girl, at age 6, had such a strong food scarcity trauma that her survival instinct was to check for food every 20 minutes at a stranger's house. Now, if you've made it this far, I have some good news. That girl and her brother were adopted by that foster family shortly after and have grown up relatively well. But I will never forget the survival instincts present in that little girl's eyes. Being the nicest person ever. Of all the people I know, the nicest and most thoughtful, or caring are usually the one who have been through some shit. One is a Syrian who saw his brother getting killed by militia. Still, he is probably the most nicest man I ever met, always ready to listen or help people even if their problems are like nothing compared to what he endured. Paying very close attention to people's expressions and body language, mostly to see if they're annoyed/angry, underreacting to things, and over-explaining things that probably seem inconsequential to most. The first part is not wanting to set someone off. In tandem with this, most underreact because any expressions of unhappiness or anything that can be perceived as negative usually gets taken as an invitation to be unloaded upon or to have someone upset displace their anger and then you end up the target of a tirade. A lot of people, myself included, over-explain things because it's a defense mechanism in anticipation of being yelled at or being very harshly criticized because the other person tries to pin the blame on you, even for things out of your control // which is why one over-explains. People who have been through some shit are reading these replies and realizing for the first time what their giveaways were all this time. Unusually bad memory for the kind of person they are. Edit, since this is getting so much traction, I'd like to list how I personally deal with this issue. It affects my attention and information retaining abilities, so I do these steps to help with that side. 1. Communication. Tell your friends. Get them to understand that sometimes experiences won't stick with you even if you paid attention and enjoyed it. 2. Write your activities and goals down. You won't be left wondering what you did yesterday and what you wanted to do earlier that day either. Being able to refer back to that information is a lifesaver, both literally and metaphorically. Helps me stay sane. 3. Review conversations and what you may be learning from them. This is a great time to use the second tip. You can write down how you felt or how you interpreted new information. I did that today, for example, since I'm trying to learn how to set up commissions and bank accounts and whatnot. Spending some extra time at the end of the day seriously helped me retain that information. 4. Progress is slow towards a normal memory. It's taken me like 10-ish years to be able to actually feel more like a functioning adult and less like a snail in my mental capacity. I couldn't hang on to any information besides what I needed to pass school tests and trauma. Regaining or repairing your memory takes a lot of time, much like the healing process takes a lot of time. 5. Most importantly, understand your own self. It's similar to depression where it's very overwhelmingly discouraging and you can't put down an exact source of your issue. Accepting that makes moving forward a lot easier since you'll spend less time beating yourself up over not having a tangible source of your issue, and more energy to try your best since that's all you can do. When you see someone deal with something extremely emotionally damaging or physically painful and they act like they don't even notice it, like nothing's changed. When you see that, you know they've seen the worst and nothing is gonna get to them. I am willing to share past negative experiences with people to let them know you can survive fucked up situations and it's okay to talk about it and to work through it. My dad was an alcoholic. My parents were abusive towards each other. I see signs in other people's lives and to be there for them and let them know there is nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to seeking help or support. But there are darker parts of my childhood I don't even talk to my husband about. There are some experiences better left in a box and not opened, especially when you don't know how people might react to it or if they will see you as different once you open that box. Not trusting people. You could be friends for years, and think you're close, but in fact, you don't have the slightest idea what's going on in their lives. They could be staying up all night, being depressed, and tomorrow morning say hello with a smile on their faces. They simply don't trust people anymore no matter what they do/don't do. Never asking for anything, even the bare minimum. Apologizing for things that aren't their fault even in the slightest. Never talking about their issues seriously, probably joking about it or even staying away from the topic completely. Flinching at small things. When I was younger, I went shopping with my cousins. My uncle told us we could get whatever we want, so my cousins excitedly went around the store looking at whatever items there were. I literally didn't know what to do, and only got one inexpensive thing after my uncle had to constantly reassure me that it's okay if I pick out a few things I like. The reason being, any time my parents spent money on me, whether it be for necessities, school, extracurriculars, whatever, they would throw it back in my face later on and make me feel guilty for asking for things/having money spent on me. So I eventually just stopped asking for things. 2 days ago, my dad asked me why I never ask for anything or want to buy anything ever, and I didn't even bother explaining because I didn't feel like being gaslit into believing that the things I experienced as a kid never actually happened. It sucks, but it's whatever. Children, who grow up in dysfunctional homes where there's a lot of fighting and arguing, when they're adults, tend to hate confrontation. They lack self-esteem and much more easily believe people who gaslight them. They don't easily stand up for themselves. Their reaction to unexpected stress. If, for instance, you startle someone and their reaction is atypical, defensive or offensive stance, dropping to the ground, or otherwise very pronounced, followed by anger, that's a sign they have spent a lot of time in life-threatening situations. Also, if everyone around is panicking, but they are very calm and collected, that is an indication of living in a state of extreme prolonged stress. People who are very closed off. I've always known that I'm a really private person, but I've recently made the connection about why I'm closed off to such a degree. When you've been through some shit in your life, sometimes the idea of anyone knowing any intimate detail about you can be taxing and even scary. Isolation. At home, work, vacation. People's advice becomes repetitively annoying, but you're too worn down to even express it. There's a part that goes missing in some people that can't be replaced with any advice, therapy, or other methods. A sort of numbness and feeling that you are on a different level or plane of existence that you know humans probably shouldn't veer into if it can be avoided. Apologizing constantly, as if for simply existing. Either being extremely evasive and reserved in relationships, or clinging on for dear life, perhaps oscillating between the two. Feeling more comfortable in chaos and pain because that's more familiar than stability and comfort. Living in a constant state of flight/fight/freeze/fawn, not just in terms of hypervigilance type of stuff, but when applied to their life in general. Not fully being able to identify typical emotions, having trouble expressing how they're feeling, or being completely numb and seemingly immune to reactions. Retelling traumatic events as if they were just another mundane life experience, and oftentimes, not even realizing it was something traumatic. Or being completely sparse with details about their life/past. Feeling constant guilt/shame, especially when it comes to something as simple as treating themselves occasionally, or even just attending to their basic needs, whilst simultaneously feeling guilty for so much as asking for help/support. Helping and being there for others to the detriment of their own mental health and well-being. Daydreaming a lot, or being out of it. Struggling to pay attention, or actively dissociating throughout the day. That's all I can think of right now. You've reached the end of the video. Do you have a trauma yourself? Or can you relate to any of the stories from this video? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you like the content, make sure to like and subscribe, it would help out a ton. Until next time.